Okay, today I just want to sit down, talk with you guys because today I had an interaction with a colleague that kind of inspired this video, which is really just wanting to ask the question to you all and then talking about my own experience of, have you ever made a decision or you had to make a decision that people thought was like a huge mistake? And they just really didn't understand why you would make that decision. I feel as though that's what I'm going through right now, so I just wanted to talk about it. As I talked about in my last episode, so I'm 23 years old, I'm a mechanical engineer, and I was working as a manufacturing engineer for about a year, and I quit that job. There was nothing wrong with the company, there was nothing wrong with the job. I would say the location and just where my mind was in that moment was really the main reason why I decided to leave, and I don't regret it at all. And I know that in my heart that I made the right decision. But what I've noticed throughout this journey, and it really hasn't been that long, I quit, I think I'm coming up on 2 weeks, but there's been a lot of pushback and there's been a lot of judgment, and I've been trying to navigate how I feel about it. Sometimes I would feel a little bit upset because I'm like, okay, I'm being judged, but the other part of me is feeling content with that because I understand that people oftentimes, including myself, we only make judgments based off what we can see and what we know in our own life experiences. So the other hard thing about it is like, what do you do when everything looks good on paper, at least to other people on the outside looking in, and even to yourself? Because that was something that I had to battle with. I had to ask myself, okay, this is what some people would consider to be like a dream job, and I have it all, but I don't feel right. You know what I mean? And so just having to decipher between so many different things and trying to predict all these different outcomes that I can't predict because I'm a human being. I can't do that. I had all of these feelings while I was in that situation. I knew I felt miserable. I knew I didn't like the location that I was in. I knew I just felt off. And just thinking about it, I can take myself back to that place, like how off I felt. And I for a while have been battling with this idea of corporate life and if I want to do it, should I do it? Do I not do it? And so it's just been a constant battle. But what I've realized is that I owe it to myself to create that space so that I can figure it out. You know what I mean? I feel as though I haven't really had that space for a long time now. So quitting for me, it wasn't about running away from the problem. It was just again about creating that space and figuring out the life that I want to create for myself and being more intentional with the decisions that I make. But to what made me want to talk about this is I had a phone call with my colleague, and there was a discussion about whether or not I should have reached out to her or other people and talk to my network of people, which I had done a lot of that. I reached out to the people who I felt could help me, and I sought advice, and they gave me the advice that they felt would be best for me or what they would do. And so the conversation really was just more so again just talking about all the things that I could have done, shoulda, coulda, woulda. Okay, hindsight's 2020, and I want to acknowledge that nothing that she said was wrong. I could have maybe done more. I could have reached out to her. I could have done this. I could have done that. So what she was saying wasn't wrong, but I kind of just realized, like mid conversation, I was thinking to myself, well, what if I don't want what you're telling me to do? What if I don't want to do the things that you've achieved in your career? What if I don't really value climbing the corporate ladder? And I think what I got from that conversation is there's value in it all, but it just depends on what you, in this case me, what I value. And I don't value that at this point in my life, and maybe I never will. People are going to give you advice, myself included. We all give advice depending on where we're at in our life. We give advice based off what we would do with our own life because that's all we have to go based off of. I have to go based off my own experience. She has to go based off what, her own experience. And again, it just goes down to, at least in my opinion, it just comes back to what we value as people. And so I'm understanding that when I tell people who are used to the stability of what corporate can offer, I would argue that right now in this job market, it's not as stable because people are getting laid off. Companies are reorganizing. That's the term that they love to use. But I'm just understanding that when I tell people that I left something that looked amazing on paper, why that might be daunting. And I'm just trying to learn how to not take that personally. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten the question, like, what are you going to do now? What's the next job? Why would you leave? How are you going to sustain yourself? Like all these questions, and they're all valid questions. But I think for the first time in my life, I'm okay with with not having the answer, because I dead ass don't. But when you make decisions, people don't understand what goes into your own decisions. And another thing that I had to kind of learn for myself, and I'm still learning, is learning when to stop taking advice from people. When I had to make the decision to quit my job, it can feel very daunting because, again, my own experience of going to school, getting the degree, getting the job, doing all these things, and then you're in it now, you're in the workforce. You've now adapted to this idea that has been fed to you for so long. So when I did quit, or when I was vacillating in between the decision to quit, I was asking so many people for advice, so many different people on, well, what would you do? And you know what? Every decision was different because every person is different. Everyone's situation is different. What they're thinking and what they're feeling and what they're going through in their life is different. And no one was able to give me the answer that I was seeking because that answer had to come within me. It wasn't going to be given by anyone else aside from me and myself. And just being here, now that I'm home and I'm taking a break and I'm relaxing, I now understand how important it was for me to leave. Even though in the moment it felt very scary, but I had to stop taking in advice from all these other people. And it wasn't their fault because I was asking for it, because I was confused. But looking back, I'm like, was I really confused, or was I just trying to, I don't know. I think at some point I was trying to maybe take in legitimate advice so that I could have a better understanding of how to navigate this really big life decision. But I think the other part of it was just, after a while, wanting to hear what other people had to say so that it could influence my decision on staying, even though I knew that wasn't what I should have done. And I didn't do it. And I'm glad that I didn't do it. So I think where I'm at is, at least for me, how I grew up, and society overall, especially in the West, like the US, it's one path. You go to school, you do this, you do that, or maybe you have a family that comes from entrepreneurs, and maybe they're on the mindset of fuck school, don't go to school. You need to work the family business, keep that timeline going. Whatever your life looks like. For me, it was going to college. That was a non-negotiable. But whatever it looks like, I think sometimes we often get stuck in this mindset of like life having to look like a straight line. The path that you follow has to be linear. You can't make twists and turns. And that's just not the truth. Sometimes you have to be okay. And when I say you, I'm really talking to myself here, but I am learning how to be okay with taking the path that's less traveled, because sometimes that's just what you got to do. And it can be scary because when you are taking an unconventional path, that's not really going to be celebrated unless or until it works. Whatever working looks like for you. But in my case, for me, I want to be a web designer. I want to be a web developer. I want to make websites for small businesses. I would love to do this full time. But regardless of that, right? That, in my case, is kind of an unconventional route. And so that's why I admire people who do things that you wouldn't normally think about doing, or taking the path that just isn't really sought out. Just because it's scary, it doesn't mean that it's the wrong decision. When you're going down an unconventional path, there's not really a lot of guidance because no one does it. It's unconventional. It's not the norm. Whereas for me, when I went to school, everything was planned out, down to the courses that I took whenever I decided on the major that I wanted. I mean, there was no room for stepping outside of the box because the path was laid out. So just understanding that if you're in a season like me and you're trying to navigate what decision that you want to make, and you feel like the decision that you made that's unconventional or that's less charted feels wrong, allow yourself some time to sit with the decision that you made, because with any big life change, there comes a transition period where you have to kind of give yourself some time to adjust. And for me, in my case, I'm in a point or in a moment of stillness where I am applying for jobs, but nothing's happening right away. You know what I mean? Whereas when I graduated school, there was a moment, like a month, where I didn't have a job lined up. But when that job came and I had to make that decision, it was bam, 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 like graduation, job, you move, you work. And that's just how it went. So try not to, at least this is what I'm telling myself, try not to get down on yourself. Try not to feel like you have to have it all figured out. Some seasons are literally just for you to sit and be still and allow things to work behind closed doors that you just may not understand, you may not be able to see. And that's part of what having like this blind faith is. Like, everything happens for a reason. However you want to view that is totally up to you. And so yeah, right now maybe it's just a period where you just need to sit with yourself and be still. And just, for me, when I was working at my job, all I could think about is this, sitting here talking to my camera, or just spending time with family, having all this time on my hands. That's all I wanted to do. Now I have all day to work on web design. And now that I'm here, I find myself kind of being bored and I wish I had something to do. But this is exactly the moment that I wanted. This is what I was asking for. And so now I'm here. I deserve to give myself that. So I know that was like a long-winded way of me just saying it's okay for you to not have it all figured out. It's okay for me to not have it all figured out. Sometimes that's just what life is about. And sometimes what you're meant to do may not fit the timeline of others. I have a lot of friends who are still in corporate. I have friends who are freaking influencers and friends who are entrepreneurs, friends who are in corporate slash influencers slash entrepreneur. Like everyone's timeline is going to look different, and everyone's measure of success is going to be different too. Some people measure success by climbing that corporate ladder. Some people measure it by having XYZ amount of money. Some people measure it by having freedom and having autonomy to do business how they want to do it, even if they may not make as much money. But that's okay because there's a trade-off for that feeling of freedom there. So you owe it to yourself. I owe it to myself to figure out what that is. And sometimes it may not fit in the timeline or this idea that society, or maybe your friends or your family or your coworkers or your manager or your boss, your nanny, your gammy, your mama, your daddy, whoever else has thought for you. And it can be scary because, again, when you're navigating life, it's about what you want, and no one else can tell you how that's going to look. So naturally, you're going to have to make decisions that people close to you maybe have not had to make, if that makes sense. And even if you do find someone who has had to make that decision, there's still little intricacies that may not fit with your story, or maybe it might fit with your story. It all just, to me, it's just very relative. So overall, it's just about figuring out, in my case, where I'm at, what matters to me, and just understanding that the road less traveled often feels lonely. And it feels lonely for a reason, because nobody can validate it while you're walking in that path. You're kind of going in blind. You know what I mean? So what I have been trying to do, at least, is look back on all the decisions that I've made, all the areas where I felt very nervous, and just kind of ask myself, okay, well, every decision that I've made up to this point, even if I did go through hardship, I've always ended up where I'm meant to be in the end. Like, things have usually turned out to be pretty okay. You know what I mean? Help your brain find evidence to contradict your fears. For me, I am nervous about not being able to find that consistent income, because I know that that's something that I need. I mean, we all need money to survive. So I'm nervous about that. And it kind of took me back to this feeling of when I graduated college, when I didn't have a job right away. I was very nervous and very scared and just fearful. But I ended up getting a job literally a month later. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that same timeline is going to be what it's going to be, but I got a job. I know that I'm not going to be unemployed forever, whether it be me having to stick out my entrepreneurship, for a lot while longer without having that high paying corporate job, whatever it looks like. Help yourself by training your brain to look for moments in your life where you were going through a lot, but you figured it out, and tell yourself in the situation that you're going to figure it out again. I know, for example, entrepreneurship, it looks crazy for people who don't really understand entrepreneurship until it works out. People who take art seriously and do art for a living, artists, it looks crazy until people start believing in their work. Creators or influencers. I have a friend that comes to my mind specifically. She was on the influencer thing way before I even understood what the fuck that meant. Like, I had no idea what it meant to be an influencer, everything that went into it. And for me, and I'm pretty sure for a lot of people in her life, that looked crazy until people started watching, until she started getting the views, until people started to realize, okay, this is the vision. So just understand that a lot of things that you do in life, people are not going to understand. That's just something that's the whole entire gist of this video. And sometimes when you take a path and then things work out, you might be able to inspire other people along the way to take that same leap of faith that maybe they didn't understand until they saw you do the same thing. Overall, I'm definitely not advising anyone to quit their job. Don't make, irrational decisions. Don't make decisions based off emotions. Make sure you have, a set plan in place. For me, that was being able to come back home and live with my family. Take calculated risks, and just understand that there's a difference between running away from something and then running towards something. I literally don't know what's next for me. I have no idea. Not a clue. I may go back to corporate. I may not. I may go work at Home Depot for a while. I might work as a bartender. Like, I just don't know. I literally don't know what's next for me. It's uncomfortable. I don't have it all figured out. But it's also exciting, again, to just be able to say, I don't know. It's exciting but scary, but it's exciting because it opens doors for other things. And another thing I was thinking about is I might end up looking into things that I didn't really know existed either. together. So yeah, overall, if you're in a season where you're having to make a tough decision, everyone is not going to understand your decision, and that's fine. And it doesn't make them a bad person. They may not understand because they wouldn't take that decision. They wouldn't take that risk. But sometimes your own decision is enough. And you have to know when to stop listening to the outside noise and just say, you know what, I'm just going to trust myself on this. And no matter how that outcome comes out to be, or whether you have some rough patches in the road, do not for a second guess it. Keep moving through it, because maybe there's something else that you need to learn at the end of that journey, whatever that journey might be for you. Sometimes end up being the best part of your life. You know, with me moving out to Charleston and working that full-time engineering job, that was a very tough decision that I had to make, because I really didn't want to do it. I didn't want to just graduate and then have to leave to go live in another state that I knew was full-time. Like, this is the big league now. I'm not at an internship where I can just quit after 3 months, especially because the company I was with, they helped me move. So there was a contractual obligation there, which I'm very grateful for. But anyway, that decision, even though it was very hard, I learned a lot and I gained a lot of experience, not just work-wise, but just as a person, personal development. I was able to just navigate things in a way that I think have helped me. And I really do think that sometimes the hardest decisions that you've had to make sometimes end up being the best part of your life. So yeah, let me know in the comments, have you ever had to make a decision that you knew was right for you, but people just didn't really understand in the moment? And then if you made that decision, did it turn out to be the right decision? Or maybe the thing that you left, did you realize that that was actually what was best for you? Or did you think of something else? Whatever it is, let me know. I'm really interested to figure it out, just to talk with people who are kind of on the same path that I'm on. And yeah, overall, this channel really is just going to be about me just navigating my life again. I don't have anything figured out. I literally don't. I could be back in corporate next month for all I know, or I could still be unemployed and I could be working, like I said, at Home Depot, which was my favorite job ever in the world. I don't know. It's all up in the air, but I'm gonna let you all in on it. I'm gonna keep letting you all know what's working for me, what's not working for me. And yeah, we're just gonna go from there. Okay, bye.